This is a Shane Plays podcast extra. Content that was not recorded as part of the live Shane Plays radio show. Enjoy.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
This is the second of a two-part Shane Plays podcast extra series where I had the pleasure of talking with Russ Morrissey of ENworld. And in the first part, we talked about his Wine, What's Old is New RPG system. Make sure to go find that. It's a great interview if you haven't already heard it. It goes into a lot of what the game's about and, you know, his history with designing it and a bunch of cool stuff like that. And then this part is talking about ENworld, the well-known RPG news and forum site, and then also the ENnies, which are basically the Oscars of the tabletop RPG industry and happen at Gen Con every year. And I just really enjoyed talking with Russ about this. So, and now I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thanks so much. So I guess we'll start the official stuffy interview here. Okay, so Russ, well, first of all, folks, this is Russ Morrissey, a.k.a. Morris, on Twitter of ENworld, and also the ENnies RPG Awards, and then also the What's Old is New role-playing game. So he's a man of many interests and irons in the fire.
Multiple pies, I think, is the phrase.
Yes, multiple, and of interest to tabletop role-playing games. So first of all, Russ, welcome to Shane Plays. I really appreciate your time and being here.
Yeah, it's very, very kind of you to let me join you.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. So, just to jump right on in, what's your personal history with role-playing games? Like, how old were you when you first rolled the dice?
I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere around 10 or 11 years of age. And I'm now 21.
Okay.
So, no, that would have been, 30 years ago.
Yeah, we're roughly the same generation then.
Yeah. So I started with AD&D First Edition. I think was my first D&D experience. I think there was some sort of brief forays into earlier editions before that, the basic sets and things. But AD&D First Edition was like the first big sort of delve into D&D.
Okay. Do you happen to remember what the first adventure or character you played? I mean, do you remember that far back? Or?
No. I try and think. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff we did originally was all homebrew stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think we really knew what we were doing, to be honest. These days, it's a lot easier to find out how you're supposed to run a game and what a tabletop role-playing game looks like when it's being played. But back then, it was you kind of had to guess and make it up yourself.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of homebrewed stuff. I seem to remember we did play the Dragonlance modules a little later, but we were a little before that. Goodness me, I honestly can't think what the first thing we played was. It must have been some kind of horrible, rubbishy homebrewed mess, I imagine.
That you have dear memories of and love very much. For sure. Yeah. I think I played a little bit here and there, different role-playing games, whatnot, but I think the very first module, like really sitting down serious D&D I ever played, I'm pretty sure was the Keep on the Borderlands, because that came for free with the basic set. AD&D, I think, was pretty much homebrew stuff. So, although I do remember playing like the Slaver series, there was, the Slaver Lords and all that stuff. But So, we did a lot of homebrew stuff too.
Yeah, I've got a bit upstairs. I have a big old collection of old modules like that. Just tons and tons of them.
Yeah, I'm turning into a collector of that stuff. In fact, what have I got here? I just got, let's see, Dungeon Module UK1 Beyond the Crystal Cave. So,
well, I lost all of mine. I've had to rebuy all of them off eBay. I spent a couple of years ago. I went on this kind of binge of not just role playing game stuff, but all the stuff that I lost. So we're talking like Transformers toys. We're talking like the old Star Wars Millennium Falcon toy.
Yep.
Plus loads and loads of D&D modules and things like that. And I don't know how much I spent, far too much, but I spent a lot of money just rebuilding all the toys and games I used to have as a kid.
Yeah, see, that's the geek midlife crisis for us. See, used to, guys would go out and buy sports cars, but now we go out and try to rebuy all of ours.
Well, I suppose that's harmless.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm on a massive collection frenzy right now. So I guess if you're like me, maybe you play D&D, but you played other role-playing games as well. Do you have a personal favorite? I mean, obviously, ENworld came out of a D&D focused website, and of course you cover a lot of D&D. But do you have a personal favorite game that may or may not be D&D?
Well, probably D&D is my favourite game. It's the one I've played most if I don't count my own, of course. It's the one I've played most over the years. But let's see, back in the 80s, I played Judge Dredd. I played Ghostbusters.
I love Ghostbusters.
That was the first game to ever feature a dice pool system.
Yep, I think I have heard that.
Yeah, and then they used that same system and moved on to West End Games, moved on to the Star Wars RPG and stuff like that. What else did I play? Golden Heroes, which was that? I can't remember who made that, but Golden Heroes was a superhero game. I played Fass's Star Trek and the Who games. What else did we play? There were other things. We played a whole range of games back in the 80s. We just kind of flitted from one game to the other. But we always ended up coming back to D&D for some reason. That was always the central game.
Yeah. Well, it was I mean, it's still the 800-pound gorilla, but it was definitely the 800-pound gorilla in the late 70s and all through the 80s. But there was a lot of other wonderful games out there. So, okay, so how did you originally get involved with ENworld?
A chap called Eric Noah had this was back when D&D 3rd edition hadn't yet been released. So this was 1999-ish. He had an unofficial news website where he was posting news and rumours about the upcoming edition. And I, at the time, was just one of the members of his forum. At the same time, I created my own website, which was ENworld, which was a few of us who were on Eric's forums had decided to create a collaborative world, which we called Demon Forge, and we created ENworld just to house that world. I'm not really sure what happened to all of those documents and things. They're probably spinning around on the web somewhere. Yeah. But so I had ENworld running alongside, which eventually turned into a D20 system news and reviews website, because Eric only wanted to cover really the official sort of D&D news, and I was very interested in all this sort of third-party stuff that was coming out.
Right.
So I started doing that. He was doing that, and when he decided he was going to, hang up his hat and close his website, he contacted me and said, did I want to sort of take on board the forums for him rather than him closing them, which, I said yes, and that essentially is how it all started.
So and that, that's actually I was doing some research, and it did document that, Eric Noah had his site, and the ENworld, I guess, came out of that. But, I wanted to ask you, because you never know if Wikipedia is right or not, but it sounds like Wikipedia got it. So,
right. Actually, I didn't realize there was a Wikipedia entry on this.
There is, yeah, and it seems accurate. So, now, so the ENworld name, was that kind of saying this is the custom world from the Eric Noah website?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It was, it was always supposed to be. We didn't have a name way back because we ended up calling our world Demon Forge back at the time. But when I first set up ENworld, we didn't have a name for that campaign setting. So I said, well, just for now, let's just call it the ENworld, the world that we're making on Eric Noah's forums.
Right.
So, and And then it gets to that point where it's just too late to change it, so it just stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, and it's gone on now. You have the ENnies, the awards
Indeed.
that came out, so it's interesting that is the genesis of the name, but I mean it's got a ring to it. Everybody knows, I've gotten when you've featured some of this like reviews from my website on EN World, people will be like, "Man, you were on EN World." So, it's interesting that it's become its own thing beyond, what it was originally. Um, So now is Eric Noah? Do you still stay in touch with him? Is he still involved with role playing gaming in any capacity or doing anything?
He still plays, he still games, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in touch with him, via Facebook and things like that, and we chat from time to time. He's not involved in the whole sort of doing stuff online, D&D online stuff anymore.
Okay.
He's still a gamer and he's still interested in D&D and so forth.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. I mean, and I hope that, and I'm not digging to get any personal information on him because that's his personal business. But it seemed like from my research that he put this site up, the Eric Noah's D&D third edition, reviews or whatever. It was like,
Yeah.
and before like Facebook and social media, I mean, that was the place to go to get information on D&D third edition.
What? It was.
Yeah, and then he just abruptly seemed to like say, "Okay, I'm done." So is there anything? And again, I'm not trying to get into his personal business or ask you to share anything, but is there anything like that you could share on why he did that, or was he just overwhelmed with the time, or?
I think that was basically it. There's no, there was no drama to it. It was a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
He had a full-time job, or has a full-time job. He's a busy man, and eventually, I guess for him, it just turned into a chore rather than. I mean, I don't want to speak for him,
Right.
but maybe a chore is a strong word, but it turned into work rather than fun. At which point, you think if I'm not having all that much fun anymore, why am I still doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So okay, well that's fair enough. Well, I wish him well. And Eric, if you happen to listen to this, thank you for doing your website, which then turned into EN World. So
His website is archived on EN World actually.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom, there's a link to it where I got the entire site there, just kind of archived not exactly how it used to, but as close as I can get. Because Eric was kind enough to send me the files. It was a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. He sent me the files so that I could have the whole thing.
So when you check out your site statistics, your analytics or whatever, I mean, does that portion of the site still get traffic? Is there still some interest in it?
Not really. I mean, it's buried right down at the bottom. Maybe I could make it more visible. Not really. It's mainly there just for nostalgia reasons. There's, the news is 16 years old now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there it is. Eric Noah's unofficial D&D third edition news.
That's the one.
Yeah, and again, if people like, this was what 1999 to 2001, I think.
Around then, yeah.
Yeah, sites like this were critical. I mean, now there's so many ways to get news online and everything.
This was before you could create a blog just by pressing a button,
right.
or a community on Facebook, or all this sort of stuff. This sort of stuff required a lot of hard manual work. I mean, Eric's pages, he was writing in HTML and uploading them each day and things like that. There wasn't an automated sort of blogging platform or anything like that.
There was no WordPress. So, yeah, without a doubt. Speaking of, what does EN World run on, if you don't mind me asking?
A very, very heavily modded vBulletin.
Okay.
It doesn't much resemble the original software anymore because it needs to do so many things that the core software doesn't do very well. But yeah, it's a heavily modified vBulletin.
So are you techie inclined, or do you have people help you out with that?
Not very. I can muddle my way around some HTML. I can usually figure bits and pieces out if I spend time with them, and I can sort of manage to administrate software and install software and so forth, or install mods and things. But yeah, I do have to sort of pay people to help me from time to time. If I need bugs fixed and all that sort of stuff, I need help. that sort of thing I can't do myself at all. I'm not a computer programmer.
Gotcha. So so enworld.org, enworld, which is your site that is a huge resource for tabletop role-playing game news and forums and many other things. So what kind of, I mean, obviously you're a staff. I mean, how many people are supporting this site, I guess, like would be considered staff?
Goodness. Well, there's a lot of freelancers who do bits and pieces. Would you count those?
Yeah, I would say so. If you have freelancers that are recurring basis,
I think there's probably a good. Goodness, I don't know. Well, there's me I do this full time, obviously.
Sure. Right.
So I'm the only person that does it full time. So we have at the moment we have 4 or 5 news columnists. They're mainly quite a recent thing, actually. In the last year, I brought those on. There's Chris Helton, who's come over from Bleeding Cool, Daryl Mott from Ain't It Cool News, and a couple of other people. We have moderators, volunteer moderators on the forums themselves. We have the Patreons, which are Insider and Trailseeker, which produce articles for 5e and for Pathfinder, respectively. Each of those has an editor, an art director, and a layout person. So there's 3 each on either of those. What am I up to now? Probably approaching 10 to 12 people now, aren't we?
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of that is relatively within the past year or two that you've grown to that point. So.
Yeah, well, I got. I don't know if you know Angus Abramson.
I do not.
He co-founded Cubicle 7, the Dragon Meat convention over here.
Okay.
Really involved with things like that. Anyway,
I'm familiar with Cubicle 7, but I just wasn't familiar with that name. So.
Yeah, he was one of the co-founders of that. He left Cubicle 7 a few years ago, and now he's sort of moved over to help with the publishing with the sort of product side of it. Because I can write a book, but I don't know an awful lot about getting it out there on store shelves, which is the sort of thing he knows how to do. So he's handling that side of things. So he's the closest thing to I suppose, a part-time employee that there is.
So it's a one-man show plus a lot of supporting.
A lot of support, yeah. I can't underplay the support. I think without all that support, there wouldn't be half of what you see now.
Okay, so that kind of leads me into my next question. So you launched ENworld alongside Eric Noah's site. So sometime between 1999 to 2001, you launched ENworld.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year was that ENworld actually launched?
It was New Year's Day 2001, I think. So, yeah, because I wasn't in the country for New Year's Day 2000, so it must have been the following year. So New Year's Day 2001.
All right, so that's quite a way to ring in the new year. So
yeah, exactly.
So looking back to New Year's Day 2001, are you surprised personally that ENworld has grown from what it was then? Which, if I understand right, when you first launched it, it was a message board kind of revolving around a custom D&D 3rd edition campaign world, which you're saying was right. Demon Forge, to what it is today. I mean, back then, did you want to grow it to what it is today, or are you just kind of surprised that this is what's happened?
Well, it's happened slowly and organically, so there was no kind of moment of, oh my God, what's just happened?
Right.
That wasn't on my mind at the time. I had a regular job, rather than this job.
Yeah. What did you? It
was a hobby back then. It really was, and it was a few years before I decided, right, I'm going to quit my actual job and do this full time, and actually try and make a living out of doing this thing that I'm actually passionate about, as opposed to the job which I was selling financial products, which I was not passionate about in the slightest.
Yeah. Yeah, that was your muggle job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, been there. Yeah. So, in fact, that's what I'm kind of doing now, trying to slowly build my thing to chase my passions. So I totally get that.
I think it's if you can do it, and if you can manage to do it, it's a wonderful thing. It really is. I don't think many people were lucky enough to get that opportunity.
Right.
And it does require some luck, I think, and some,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of hard work, good timing, luck, all those things. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I feel really fortunate that I do this.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, when I was playing those D&D games back in the 80s, if I thought for a second that my living would involve writing RPG products and reporting on RPG news and all this sort of stuff, I'd have been shocked. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
wouldn't occur to me I could do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your younger self would be in awe of
Yeah.
what has
And now I've
happened.
been doing it for 16 years or so. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, you've been doing it for, yeah, if you
Long
launched in
time.
2001, yeah, you're close to
Yeah,
16, you're close to 16 years of doing it. So I was going to ask you if this is your full-time gig, but you've already answered that. So,
yeah, it is,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So, I like it. How long have you been doing it full time? At what point did you cross over into this was, a passion and a hobby into this was your, basically career?
I think I did it for about 5 years as a hobby. So we're probably talking 10, 11, maybe 11 years ago ish. I couldn't tell you exactly what date it was, to be honest.
Right.
You'd think I'd remember the day that I quit my job and
Yeah.
started doing this. I actually can't remember the day it was, but yeah, it was maybe 11 years ago.
Okay.
So since then, it's been my full-time job. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So, so basically, if somebody came to you and said, "Well, what is this EN World site? What is this all about? Like, what would you tell them? How would you describe EN World?"
I would say primarily it is two things. Firstly, it is a tabletop role-playing games news website, and secondly, it's a tabletop role-playing games community. I think most people are familiar with what a community is these days from Facebook groups, Google groups, all this sort of stuff. So it's very old-fashioned in that sense. I mean, message boards are kind of starting to dwindle away in favour of social networking. So I'm quite fortunate that I'm one of the hangers-on,
Right.
still around and hopefully still around for a bit longer. But yeah, so it's a news and reviews website and a active and friendly community for discussing tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of drama on the EN World forums. So, which unfortunately sometimes message boards and drama can kind of go hand in hand, but I haven't seen a lot of that.
Well, there's different boards for different people. I think I decided very early on that I was going to continue Eric Noah's tradition, which was basically it was going to be a very family-friendly place that your grandmother can visit, a kid can visit, anyone can visit, everyone's safe, everyone's civil to each other. If you want to go and scream abuse at each other, there's social media, there's other places, there's all sorts of places to do that, but this is one place where hopefully people can feel welcome and safe and not have to deal with that sort of stuff.
Right. Which is good. I mean, there's one thing I admire the size and the passion of the role-playing community, but it can be hard to find places sometimes that are like your grandmother and your kid could both participate.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. So recently, I guess within the past maybe year or two, you've launched you were talking about the Patreon, the Insider program, Trail
Yes.
Seeker, all that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so starting with Insider, because Trail Seeker is just the Pathfinder version of this. So, so Insider, we publish 4 to 6. It's sort of tending to be about 6 these days. Sort of mini supplements or adventures each month. And what happens is you can come. It's on a platform called Patreon, which is kind of micro crowdfunding. So you know how Kickstarter is. You crowdfund money to sort of create quite a big, sort of
Right.
45 grand project or something like that.
Sure.
Patreon's the diametric opposite of that. So it's about very small ongoing projects which people sort of. I suppose subscribe is the wrong word, but they become a patron to encourage people to continue to create these small products. it's a platform often used by artists and musicians and things like that. If you think about how back in sort of the 18th century or something, you might have a pianist who had a wealthy patron,
Right.
who would basically keep the pianist, fed and homed and clothed and things like that, and in order to sort of facilitate the creation of the pianist's work.
Right.
So this is a modern day way of doing that, but it's crowdfunding it with thousands of people rather than one big wealthy patron. You just get 1,000 people giving you $1 each.
Right. And so that's how the Insider and Trail Seeker are supported, is through Patreon.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And now has it? It seems like what I've seen you say publicly. It seems like it's been a success. I mean, how do you feel that it's gone? Has it met expectations, exceeded?
Oh yeah, Insider did so well. It's got over 1,000 patrons at the moment.
Nice.
And it's making a fairly solid amount of money each month. Definitely enough for us to pay artists, freelancers, editors, everything we need to produce, really high quality, properly, professionally laid out, illustrated articles and adventures for the game. It's brilliant. I love it, and it's doing really, really well.
That's good. And so you said that basically Insider and Trail Seeker are sister programs, but the Insider is for D&D 5th edition content, and Trail Seeker is for Pathfinder.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what is your I would guess that you're a fan of Pathfinder. I am fully aware of Pathfinder. I love D&D 3rd edition. 3.5 and all that, but I've never actually played Pathfinder. But I know it has a very, very strong fan base. So do you personally get to spend any time playing Pathfinder?
Last year we played through a Pathfinder Adventure Path over a period of about a year. So yeah, I played a long campaign quite recently, and obviously I played 3.5 before that, which is the same core system,
right?
Pathfinder, like the errated version of that system in a way. So yeah, I was very much a fan of 3.5. Definitely a fan of Pathfinder. And I'm a fan of the current 5e as well. I just love D&D in all its incarnations, and these are all just different expressions of D&D, and I love them all.
Yeah, no, I think that 5th edition, and I've played multiple editions of D&D over the years. I think 5th edition is a great edition of D&D. It's been a huge success. And I'm really glad for it. One of these days I'll play Pathfinder, but it seems Pathfinder is more about the setting and the world that Paizo has created than the rules, because we've pretty much already played the rules. I know they've added a few changes or whatever, but so it would seem to me that Pathfinder's success has been more about the IP, that they put behind it. But I don't know. I haven't played the rules.
Yeah, I'm not so familiar with the whole set. I know what it's called, and I know a few bits and pieces, but then again, I'm not that familiar with, say, the Forgotten Realms either. Right. I'm just not really a setting guy, to be honest. It's not my thing. But the rules themselves, yeah. I prefer to homebrew stuff personally. So I have so little time that I can't do that so much these days.
Yeah.
Which is why I feel some Strahd right now.
That's the irony, isn't it? As I've gotten more into my role in Shane Plays, doing the Geek Talk Radio and blogging and D&D coverage and all that. You spend all your time talking about it, and it's actually really hard to find time to do it. Yeah. So, Well,
I'm lucky in that I'm in 2 gaming groups at the moment, Tuesday and Thursday nights. So the Thursday night one is a 5e1 I'm running Curse of Strahd in.
Yeah.
And the Tuesday night at the moment I'm in a Call of Cthulhu game, which is quite good fun. I'm quite enjoying that.
Yeah, there's now they're doing. They just recently they are either coming out with or already have a new version of Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, it was last year, I think. I'm not 100% sure which edition we're playing, to be honest, but it's one of the older editions, definitely. It's harking back to the 80s again.
Well, it's the edition where you can go insane.
That is true. I haven't quite managed that yet, but I'm sure it will happen at some point.
Yeah, the way Call of Cthulhu was first described to me as a role-playing game, was not where you defeat the monsters, but where you have a chance of, when you first see the monster, you may pop a grenade in your mouth and jump off a skyscraper. And I went, okay, yeah, I want to play that.
So, it is a good game. I mean, the way I'm not desperately familiar with the systems, but all the different editions of it, but the way we're playing it at the moment, it seems fairly rules light. I don't know if that's just the way the GM is running it, or that's how it's supposed to be. But fairly rules light. There's been absolutely no combat at all, really, in 6 weeks. So it's quite a sort of role-playing heavy game rather than a sort of tactical game. And I suspect that the idea is that the things in Call of Cthulhu aren't really things you're supposed to be able to fight.
Right. Yeah, there's very few things in Call of Cthulhu that you can actually engage in direct combat with.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, once you get into, the higher level beings, I guess, yeah. And, and Lovecraft was, when you read his stuff, there wasn't any confronting. It was all about running and, either trying to discover what the heck was going on or trying to escape what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a sort of, well, certainly the game we're playing, it's set in 1920s London, and it feels very much like a horror-themed Sherlock Holmes story at the moment.
Yeah, and that is a great take on Lovecraft. Although I finally, a few years ago, sat down and read a lot of Lovecraft.
Right.
And I was amused that the Call of Cthulhu story, the big one, where Cthulhu, right? Lovecraft spends all this time describing how incredibly awful and dangerous and world-ending Cthulhu is, and this elder god threat that can't be confronted in any way whatsoever. And then the protagonist hits him with a boat and kills him. And I'm like, what?
Oh, spoilers.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm always amused by that. So, although I think there's a sort of a epilogue on the end of the story that indicates that might not be the end of everything, but I just think that's so funny. Yeah. So.
I haven't had the pleasure, but I have to pick that up now.
Yeah. No, it's like he's like rising and run, and then they hit him with like. Now, granted, it's a fairly big boat, but still, So okay. All right. Anyway, let's let that rabbit hole in. So. Okay, I want to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the ENnies.
Of course.
Okay, so I really don't think that it's false praise or exaggerating to basically say the ENnies are the Oscars of tabletop role-playing games. I mean, they're prestigious, they're well-known. When companies receive the awards, even huge companies like Wizards of the Coast, they tout the award. So tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, how did this ENnies thing start?
That was another one of those Eric Noah and me collaboration things. Yeah. So what happened, I mean, it started so small. So we were just chatting one day, and we just thought it would be nice if we could just come up with this kind of a little sort of message board based, hand out some message board based awards for things that we thought had been done particularly well in the last year in terms of role-playing games. At the time, it wasn't even role-playing games as a whole, it was just D20 system games. Just because we thought, it would be nice just to say to these people, hey, that was really cool. And it would be also a way that we could just point out some of the awesome things that we'd seen that maybe other people hadn't quite gotten round to picking up yet, or hadn't checked out yet. But it wasn't at the time ever going to be a big ceremony with medals or anything like that. But it kind of, I don't know, almost accidentally grew with loads of companies, because back then the D20 system community was quite tight knit. So loads of companies got on board and said, "Yeah, we'll enter. Yeah, why not? It sounds fun." Sure. So the first ENnies were held online in a chat room, And we managed to persuade Gary Gygax to come along and virtually host it.
Oh, fun! Yeah, very cool.
Which was kind of fun. And so yeah, we just had this little award ceremony in a chat room back in whenever that was, 2001, whenever that was anyway, back then.
That is so early 2000s, late 90s. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It was an IRC channel, actually, to be more specific.
Yeah. I love it.
And so soon after that, it must have been 2 or 3 months after that, Peter Atkinson contacts me, and he's just bought Gen Con off of Wizards of the Coast back then, and he contacts me and says, "How would you feel about because we're thinking of having an official Gen Con award ceremony? How would you feel about bringing your one over, and we'll hold it here?" So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So that, yeah. Let me think about that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so we did that the following year. So we went over there. We held a little ceremony. It was in a corridor, in a hallway outside one of the big main hallways.
So from a chat room to a corridor.
Yeah. It was literally in a corridor, and people gathered round, and it was fun and weird, but fun. And we did that. And then the following year, it got bigger again, and they gave us a ballroom to use.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was lucky enough that people started wanting to help out with it as well. So we'd have, I think it was Denise Robinson was the first person who came on as the ENnies business manager, and started organising it and with some actual event management skills, which I didn't have. Right. I was making up as I went along. And actually started turning it into an actual event with, a stage and presenters and all this sort of
all that, yeah. And the winner is
yeah, exactly, and a overhead projection show and all that sort of stuff. And it just went on from there. And we've had 3 wonderful business managers over the years now. And they've all done a wonderful job. Each one of them has managed to grow the ENnies in their own way, in a different kind of little way. And they remain, so far, a really pleasant, enjoyable evening where you just get to turn around and just sort of say to some people, all that negativity on the web and on Twitter and on the internet, and everyone's attacking anyone for what they make and what they do and who they are and all that stuff. Well, in this room tonight, just for 2 hours, all that's going to happen is we're all just going to say, well done to the artists and to the writers and to the editors and to the layout people and all these people. And just think, you did a good job. Well done.
Nice. Very nice.
I think that's the big strength of them as well, because some people, I think, sort of go, why do the ENnies affect sales figures or things like that? And my usual response is, I don't know. I don't care. Right. That's not what they're for. Companies get their financial rewards in the form of, monetary sales. And that's what they're set to do, and that's fine. The individuals within the companies, I think, get a personal buzz out of being told that cover art you did was really, really great. Here's a medal. It's a totally different thing.
Well, right,
and people rather than the companies.
Right, and so one of the things that I like about the ENnies is it's really sort of a People's Choice Awards in a lot of ways, because it's the community voting. Right.
Yeah.
For a lot of it. Now, I don't think every award is based on that, but a lot of them, there's nominations, and then people vote, and for several years now I've voted. So it's not just and
the judges each year are elected as well from the community. Right. Basically means the entire process is democratic from top down. So you elect the judges that you think are going to represent your views in tabletop role-playing games, and then those judges represent you and choose the nominations, and then they turn it back to you, and you vote on which of those 5 nominations for each category you think should win.
So there, you've got it. So if you win one of these awards, it's the role-playing game community telling you that you deserve it. So that's that's great. And it seems to me that I see. I know people take the ENnies seriously because companies of all sizes seem to, acknowledge they've received the award. Like, hey, we're like, anywhere from Mike Merles at Wizards of the Coast down to, a smaller, independent company, Bootstrap and everything. They all seem equally pleased to receive the recognition. So.
Yeah, I think that goes back to that individual thing, though. I mean, it's not so much the company; it's the individuals who.
Yeah.
I think being given an award and being applauded by your peers in a big room I think that's never happened to me, but I imagine it was really, really, really nice.
Yeah, I'd like to think it's great. So
yeah,
that's great. So you were mentioning you have business managers. Now the research I did, it seemed to indicate that is it Gabriel Whitehead? Is he the current?
That's right. Yeah, although he's actually stepping down this year for health reasons. So we're appointing someone new for next year, which I can't quite reveal who it is, but I have chosen the person.
Yeah. All right. So you have a super secret announcement coming up soon.
Yeah.
And it's Chris Perkins. I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay. So all right. So given that you have a business manager that helps coordinate, the event side of it, how much time each year does the ENnies take for you personally?
Fortunately, less these days than it used to, because back in the early 2000s, it literally was for about 3 months of my life all I did.
Yeah.
It was quite horrific. It wasn't very pleasant. Now that work is sort of distributed over a group of people. So we've got a submissions coordinator, and we've got a business manager, and we've got different people doing all the different things, which really, really, really helps. So that makes it so much easier. My main sort of job is making these sort of overall strategic decisions rather than the sort of day-to-day stuff now.
Right.
Which I'm quite gratified about, to be honest, because that it is hard work, and it's it's not a paid job. It's just the ENnies don't make any money. It's you have to do it for the love of it.
Right.
But it is hard work, and you do get shouted at quite a lot.
Right.
If you're part of the ENnies as well, there are people. There's a subset of people out there who really get angry at people who try to do nice things for other people. For some reason.
You put yourself out there, and you'll get both positive and negative. Do you have, on the flip side, do you have anybody trying to schmooze you? Like, hey, can you get me nominated? And they're like trying to smooze on you.
Not yet.
So nobody shakes your hand, and then you look down, and there's a few pound notes there in your hand.
That would be amusing. No, that has never happened. What if that actually does happen with the Oscars and things? I wouldn't have thought so.
I think that there's some.
You think it does?
Because an Oscar nomination or an Oscar win is big money to these movies.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
And it's not a fan awards. It's a closed Academy system. So I would be shocked if there wasn't a little bit of a politicking in the background for that.
Yeah, I mean, our industry is so small that everyone knows each other anyway. It'd be pretty hard to get away with that sort of stuff, I think.
But it'd be a great movie. Let's do it. Yeah.
It would be a movie. It'd be a great
drama
one.
behind the ENnies, and then a body is discovered, and the seedy underbelly is revealed. All right,
yeah,
too funny. All right, well, I think the ENnies is great. I hope they keep going, and it seems to be a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a cornerstone, but a very integral part of Gen Con now. It seems to be one of the main events.
Yeah, I hope it's become that. Yeah. I just think of it as a very positive thing in the industry, and I think it's just nice to have these positive things when there's so much negativity these days.
Yeah,
I think it's important these things exist.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so I want to briefly shift into a question on the tabletop role-playing game industry in general.
Okay.
So we're obviously in a fantastic time for tabletop RPGs right now.
I think we definitely are. Yeah.
It's I haven't seen anything like it probably since the 80s. and in some ways it's probably surpassed that with, social media and Twitch and all that exposing it
Mm.
even further. You got people literally watching D&D in theaters now. So,
Yeah.
and then you've got this Stranger Things show, featuring D&D, and
Mentioning it. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
this stuff going on. So, do you think we're in a golden age, or do you think that there's a possibility we're in a bubble that could pop at any moment?
Now I think this happens sort of periodically. We sort of get things which advance the hobby a bit more each time. I think the first one was probably word processing.
Yeah.
When people didn't have to typeset stuff manually and things like that.
Yeah.
And maybe sort of like the introduction of something like the Mac computer or something, which was with desktop publishing software and stuff like that, which I think made a big difference if you get some of those older products back from like the late 70s and stuff, and to compare them just to what came out in the 80s, there's a massive difference. There is other things. There was the whole D20 boom in the early 2000s.
Yes.
Made a big difference. I mean, that was a sort of mini golden age, I think, before it kind of burst. Kickstarter, without a doubt.
Yeah, Kickstarter's been a major.
Big thing. Social media, definitely, without a doubt, has helped push the tide up even further. Yeah, it's a combination of all these different things. So yeah, I think we're in a golden age, and I don't think it's going to burst. I think we're just going to keep going up.
Fantastic.
At least I hope so. I do hope so.
Me too. I mean, it's a very good time to, as I say on my show, it's a great time to be a geek, but it's a very
a geek in general, absolutely.
But it's a very good time to be into tabletop role-playing games, board games. Board games are at the same time huge renaissance in board games right now.
Yeah.
So
go back 20 years ago, could you have imagined all those Marvel movies?
No, I don't.
It's just amazing. If you think about it, it's amazing that we're living in an age where there's 15 or I don't know how many there are. 15 massive blockbuster, big budget Marvel movies. It's amazing. It's such a great time to be a geek. It really is.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, and a lot of the stigma of being a quote unquote nerd or a geek has fallen away.
Yeah, it's mainstreamed now, hasn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, when and I'm guessing it was the same for you. In America, growing up in the 80s, I was basically in junior high or middle school and high school in the 80s.
Yeah.
Loving all this stuff publicly could have some negative repercussions. So I still did,
I think over here we were a bit luckier because we didn't really have. I think you had the whole satanic scare stuff more than we. We didn't. It kind of, I think, spilled over a tiny bit, but nothing like, the way it circulated over there.
Well,
so I think we were.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think we were a bit luckier on that front. In that, that was something over in America, not what happened over here.
Well, there was definitely a lot of that in America. My mom, I had to basically smuggle D&D books in and out of the house. Now, if it was other role-playing game stuff, she didn't care. But, D&D had that stigma on it. And then, of course, I did it anyway. Kids, kids will be kids. But it was also, and like I said, I don't know how it was in England or in Europe. And I know social norms can be different between America and England. But there was also just a social, like, you're a nerd stigma at that time that, it could socially, now among your own friends, of course, it wasn't a stigma, but among the quote unquote cool kids, it certainly could be. But that does not seem to be there these days like it used to be. So,
well, I've got no idea what it's like to be in school these days, but back when I was in school, I'm sure people did think I was a nerd.
Yeah. I
didn't ever feel, victimized or bullied because of it, though.
Okay, well, that's good.
Well, I may have just been lucky, of course, or maybe I might be the only one that didn't, but I had no problems. Maybe, I don't know, maybe people did think I was some horrific, horrible nerd, but at least they were kind enough not to tell me to my face if they did.
Well, that's good. I mean, I would hope it was maybe different over there, but I mean, it's not like that you would get like beaten to a bloody pulp every day or anything like that. There
Mhm.
was just certain social stigmas that would kind of come with it. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
but in that scene, you've had The Big Bang Theory, you had um, oh Kevin Smith's movies, all this stuff have kind of celebrated geekdom and nerdom and made it kind of chic and cool.
Yeah.
So for the
I
kid,
remember D&D being in ET back in the 80s.
yeah, totally. They were playing D&D at the very beginning of ET.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, um, right there at the table. So yeah, and we didn't play with miniatures back then. So I was kind of fascinated to see that they had the map and the miniatures and everything in ET.
Oh,
So
we did. We did.
yeah. Well, I can't imagine playing without them now. But my group back in the day, if we had to get tactical, we would just kind of put dice around representing
Uh,
things. So
my
yeah,
5th edition game at the moment hasn't touched a single miniature yet, and we're, I think, 3 months, no, 2 months into Curse of Strahd. I don't think we're going to use miniatures, to be honest, but you never know. We've got them. If
well,
we need them, we've got them. But
fifth edition did a good thing in that they 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 made it so that if you wanted to use a grid-based tactical combat, you could, but they didn't require it. So
yeah,
and like my group uses it and I like it a lot, but
yeah,
everybody will season to taste. So
sure.
and I think fifth edition has struck a good balance. So
Yeah, like 4th edition, where you pretty much had to have a
yeah.
grid.
Yeah, no. I've heard now the fourth edition is the one edition I have not personally played. I've
Right.
watched people play it. I've listened to podcasts of it, and it seems tactical as heck, which doesn't necessarily turn me off. But yeah, it does seem very, very super tactical. So
Yeah,
uh,
it's the most tactical edition, yeah,
yeah,
without a doubt.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that loves a good tactical combat system. So um, okay, so last question, I guess, on before we move over into what's old is new. Um, So what's next for EN World? Do you have any super secret world domination plans you would like to reveal?
No, I mean, I want to sort of grow the news reporting side of it. I mean, when it comes down to it, the EN World still is a tiny little sort of cobbled together group of people just doing their thing, and I kind of want to sort of make the news reporting side more comprehensive and more professional and things like that. But that's kind of like a long-term goal, which is going to happen gradually, I think, rather than something I'm doing next year or something. It's a long-term slow thing. But what I kind of hope is to get it up to being sort of on the level of like the sort of big sort of comic book sites and things like that.
Right.
I mean, obviously the industry, the tabletop RPG industry, is much smaller than the comic book industry, but at least can try and have the level of sort of coverage that those kind of sites have. And when they have their sort of various podcasts and all these YouTube channels and all the different things that they do, I want to try and sort of move into doing all of that stuff. It does require developing some new skills, though. But you're going to move with the times.
Well,
And there's going to come a day when a website and a forum is going to be as old-fashioned as a newspaper is today.
Yeah. Well, eventually, but I still think that you've got a lot of life left in the concept. So
I hope so.
yeah.
We have big VR communities instead.
So, what you mean? Virtual reality? It'll all be done in
Yeah.
virtual reality. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so speaking of, and if you don't want to get into this, I totally understand. Just throw it out there in case you do feel comfortable discussing it. Since you're doing this full time and you're trying to grow it, and you have people involved, I know that for Insider and Trail Seeker, you have some direct Patreon support. Is the rest of the site a more traditional sort of ad-based revenue? I mean, do you feel comfortable discussing kind of what the business model is?
Yeah, there's no secret. It's a mixture. We have recently, me and the other columnists, started a Patreon to try and help sort of fund these news articles we want to write, because I pay those columnists. I don't ask them to volunteer their time.
Right.
So that means raising money. So we've got a Patreon specifically for that. Also, it's traditional ad-based. There's banner ads at the top and side of the website and stuff like that. And it's also supported by the publishing arm, which is producing things like the Patreons for Insider and that lot. My What Sold Is New game, various bits and pieces over the years. I've got some 300 odd products that we've published over the last 15 years.
Wow, exciting! I didn't realize that you'd published that much. So that's exciting.
Yeah, well, loads of them.
So were you able? Was the appearance of sites like DriveThruRPG, did that help you grow?
That was one of the other things that I meant to mention. So when we were talking about the things that caused big sort of growth spurts or boosts, when self-publishing suddenly became really easy through sites like, it was RPG Now came first. When RPG Now appeared, I think that was a fantastic boon to the industry. It was wonderful. Anyone could just go along, put a product up there, and start selling just like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So absolutely. In answer to your question, absolutely, without a doubt.
It's got that model's gotten so successful that now that we have the DMs Guild, where people can publish in a revenue sharing model using Wizards of the Coast IP. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think Margaret Weiss Productions has done it. Monty Cook has done the same thing with his Cypher system. They've all got sort of versions of the DMs Guild for their own systems up there on the OBS sites.
Yeah, and and we're leading into What's Old Is New here in a moment, but I'm pretty sure I read that people could publish What's Old Is New stuff. Is that?
It's an open game, It's released under the open gaming license, so anyone can publish for it. Yeah.
Excellent. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.